stuff. So please, Jacquelyn and Paul, please come up with a seat. Thank you. You can take my seat. I'm in the middle.
Whatever's easier for you.
Yes, keep Paul, thank you for coming back. And Paul, can you please just give a real quick introduction of yourself, who you are, and
sure.
To the audience, everybody.
I am a criminal defense attorney that practices out here in Orange County and Los Angeles. My office is right here in Garden Grove, off of Magnolia and Garden Grove Boulevard. Part of my practice, I am required to know a little bit of immigration law and how the criminal conviction can affect green cards and maybe result in deportation and things like that. Governor Brown recently just signed a bill requiring criminal defense attorneys to specifically advise their clients of the immigration consequences of a conviction. Because sometimes a deal like probation may sound good, but it's not, because it may result in deportation.
Thank you, Paul. So, Jacquelyn, I'm sorry that we got cut off earlier, but I just want to real quick return to what you mentioned earlier. As far as the green card holders, not to travel outside the United States, is it safe for me to summarize it at the point where, say, if you are a green card holder, before you decide to travel outside of the United States, is it safe for me to check all of my criminal record for running with the laws? Is it safe for me to do that, or is it not to travel at all, period?
Okay, so in general right now, I think that most people generally believe that even if they don't have any issues with law enforcement in their history, that they're a good immigrant, that their rights will always be respected. But as we've seen in the past week, that is not necessarily the case. A lot of things are changing about how, about who can be let into the country after the executive orders came down from President Trump. And we should expect that more countries will be added to these travel bans, regardless of whether judges come out and say that they think that they're unconstitutional and that they're going to stop them for the time being. What I am actually advising all of my clients, if they are not U.S. citizens, is that they not travel outside the United States, period, for the next 4 months. And there's several reasons for that. The first is that the list of countries where a travel ban could be expanded is, I mean, there are some Asian countries on there. We don't know exactly what they are at this time. But also what I mentioned earlier, where Trump said that one of his priorities is going to be to push out the 870,000 people with final orders of removal. And that part of that bargaining that he's going to do with foreign nations that do not accept their nationals is denying visas to their people. And as you can see from the travel ban, certain people with green cards from the 7 nations on his executive order from the Middle East were also not let back into the country at first. So if visas are denied to people from China, to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos because those governments are refusing to take back their nationals, a green card holder from Vietnam who otherwise might not have any issues with law enforcement, even someone who's a Canadian citizen but originally from Vietnam or born there, or someone who's an Australian citizen and carrying an Australian passport but was born in Vietnam, those people could actually be stranded at our airports if any of these travel bans come down, because the Trump administration has decided that he is not okay with, or Vietnam has decided they're not okay expanding the repatriation agreement. So that's one concern that I have. The other one is this, is immigration law can be very complex and difficult to understand. Even when we had case decisions that said burglary under California law, under Penal Code 459, is no longer a conviction that carries immigration consequences. Even then, I had clients with green cards who were coming back to the United States with only a 459 on their record, and they were still sent to immigration court to begin removal proceedings. And you know, their green cards and their travel permits were taken away. And it's one of those things where you might have a year between that and your hearing in court. And during that year, even though we showed up to court, we got the Homeland Security attorney to just terminate the case against my client, he still didn't have his green card for a year, and that caused a lot of problems. Luckily, he had been working with this employer for 18 years, so they said, well, we know that you're probably work authorized and we're going to continue to employ you. But for a lot of people, that would not be the case, say if they're changing jobs and things like that. So the underlying message is, even if based on your understanding of the law or an immigration attorney's understanding of the law, there should be no enforcement action against you. Practically speaking, that's no longer the case. And as I mentioned earlier, if Trump is adding 10,000 additional new immigration officers, then how well trained can you expect these people to be? When people who have been extensively trained might have thought that my client could have been deported from the country when legally that was not the case.
Thank you, Jacquelyn. I really appreciate it. And so right now, which is basically, if you're not an American citizen, you know, really, and you have a green card, the best thing is try not to travel, any travel at all.
Right. So that's my advisory.
Yes.
If travel is absolutely necessary, I do recommend that the person consult with an immigration attorney.
Price, yes.
And because things are just changing day by day in terms of the orders coming down and how the law is being enforced or not enforced at our nation's airports and basically border checkpoints in Canada and Mexico. And
then that's for the green card, and in turn for the people who are currently in immigration limbo, which is, you did mention that the relief under the Prop 47, which is some of us need to really look into or maybe consult with an attorney whether or not we are eligible for that. And which is also, that's brought me back to why I want to invite Paul off here is, I think Paul did mention, besides Prop 47, there's also something called the Certificate of Rehab or something like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
There's lots of new options, lots of new laws have been passed recently. Prop 47 for one. What it does is it reduces your felony to a misdemeanor, even if you went to state prison.
Yes.
Okay, which is very, very important. Once it's reduced to a misdemeanor, 364 days, and as you know, that's not a year. Okay, so you start taking the reasons why they want to deport you off the list. So it's not an aggravated felony, it's not a crime of moral turpitude. Now, there's other measures. Certificate of rehabilitation. That is available to people that got sentenced to state prison. I'm talking about real state prison. I'm not talking about 1178 you did your time in county, because that you can do a 1230.4 expungement for. A certificate of rehabilitation, it normally requires, for most people, 7 years. 7 years, you stay clean, and, you know, sometimes they like to, you know, for you to show what you've done with your life. You know, judges like that. What have you done with your life, you know, since you've been out?
Can you give an example, you know?
For example, something like this. For something, you know, you've helped the community, you've mentored youths, you've done something to reduce the rate of recidivism.
Besides just going to work? Or
right, besides just going to work, they like to see, you know, volunteer at church, things like that. Judges like to feel good when they give people a second chance. You know?
Community volunteers.
Exactly. So whatever people can do to, you know, it just increases their chances. They can apply multiple times. It doesn't matter, but, you know, it's always nice to have it granted the first time.
Yes.
So after you get granted a certificate of rehabilitation by the judge, it automatically results in an application for a pardon direct to the governor. And the governor has discretion. Governor Brown has been great. He's signed so many compared to Schwarzenegger and, you know, Gray Davis. One thing I've noticed, you know, because I was looking at the stats, he's been focusing on people from the 80s, the 90s, mainly drug crimes, you know, crimes of nonviolence, things like that. But, you know, what do people have to lose? Because, you know, like you yourself, you are an inspiration because, you know, for you to be out here, you know, so things happen. It doesn't hurt to just try, just to apply for it. And also another thing I'd like to note, a lot of laws have changed, and people haven't been keeping up. I think it might not hurt just to speak to an attorney. Find one that specializes in criminal or in immigration to see if anything's changed with the status of their case. Because, you know, just the other day I noticed, you know, a family member, somebody that was still in prison. I took a look at it and I'm all like, they're not supposed to be in prison because of new laws that have changed.
Gotcha.
You know, so, you know, feel free to contact a criminal attorney, and whenever people contact me, consultation is always free. I will always review your case. I will not charge any money unless I feel like I can do something. You know, so.
Would you have a chance, would you be able to help me out, like, with a phone number or maybe an address?
Absolutely.
You know, so that people can reach you?
Absolutely.
I didn't have a chance.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, read it out.
Okay. I can read it out right now, and I can post it on. I will post it on the Facebook page.
Yes.
And it is my cell phone because of the nature of my business. A lot of my clients call me in emergencies because, you know, the police are outside of my door, things like that. I get calls all the time, text message and emails.
Yes. Thank you. And then, so after, let's just say, after the pardon's granted and everything, is that mean that from here it goes back to you?
Yes, it does. Although there are steps that have to be taken by your criminal attorney still after the pardon is granted.
Yes.
That are extremely unclear to me. But basically, a lot of what happens is a lot of people come to me, and I'll tell them that in order to reopen their removal proceedings or safely apply for citizenship or something along those lines, they'll need Prop 47, or they'll need a 17B reduction, or a certificate of rehabilitation and a pardon. And I will then refer them to criminal attorneys who specialize in these post-conviction and what we call executive clemency type measures that they need in order for an immigration case to move forward. So I usually don't hear from my client for a while. And then once these things are granted, I ask that they call me back, and then depending on what stage they're in, we can then begin the process to reopen their immigration case.
So just to recap, man, this is I'm going crazy. So, so if a person who's currently on immigration limbo right now, they can ask for the Prop 47 if they qualify. If they're not, if they want to look to see if there's any other routes for relief, they can try a certificate of rehabilitation, which is not the first time you don't make it, you can try it again, but in order for a judge to really consider it, you're gonna have to show something more than just going to work or not committing crime. That's community volunteering or do something that's, you know, beyond expectation. And then if and when the certificate of rehab is granted, then you can go for application for.
It automatically results in that.
Automatically goes to a application for pardon to the governors.
Correct.
And then that's when it takes you back to the post conviction. And
if it's granted.
If it's granted, it'll take you to post conviction with the executive clemency, something like that.
Well, then it just comes back to me.
And then it comes back to you.
And then it is no longer a conviction.
It's no longer a conviction.
And then.
And that's when you will do everything you can to help
to reopen,
remove
the immigration case.
and the green card comes back.
Right.
All right.
No, and you should always check with an attorney because I found out something recently. 1203.4 normally has no effect on immigration. However, for possession of meth cases prior to 2011, it will, you know, prevent a conviction to be used in immigration proceedings. So there's always little nitty-gritty things. Do not go on the internet, you know, and try to figure it out yourself. Do not go to a general practice attorney, you know, that practices every law under the sun. Go to people that practice that type of law, you know, day in, day out, because this is what they do. And, you know, if they don't know the answer, they know who to refer to.
This is astounding. I'm so thankful to have these two attorneys in-house for our group that would just barely even come out, it's like baby steps. So it's really, really thankful for both of your presence here. And this is something we can even further discuss in the futures meeting because it has to do with people's journey towards trying to obtain for pardon or trying to obtain for relief. But I'm going to stop it here so that we can get a break and then we can gather ourselves into these circles for our APIROC meetings and the next step of what we're going to do. But really, really want to thank you both for being a part of this and willing to be in a part of this group. And it's only going to help us to become better and stronger for the community. This is so